Today we're going to be covering version control and what version control is, some of the popular version controls that are out there, and some of the problems that it solves and the solutions that it offers. But basically, the main thing that I want to try to get is to give you guys just the essentials on the topic to get you started coding and using version control in your project. If you haven't been to my channel yet, basically it's gonna be this particular lesson is part of the foundations lessons. And basically what that is I'm trying to create a series where you just need a bare minimum things to get you started. So here goes version control. So what is version control? In simplest form, the version control is just a way to keep your records in like a history of your records, have like a timeline of all of your programs in a certain time frame. There's the popular version controls out there right now. There's Git, Subversion. There's a lot of different version controls, but for our solo encoded projects tutorials, we're gonna just focus on Git. So what does Git solve? What problem does it solve? One of the main things that it solves is that it gives us a history, as I mentioned before. So let's say that, so here's an example. Let's say that an engineer writes some code, they save those changes, and then later on down the line they make some changes to those code base, and then they delete something and save over things that they didn't mean to, and then now they're kind of stuck, right? He actually needed those changes. So that history is solved with having version control. Like if a new game is released and there's an update to that game, they realize there's something wrong with it, so they could go back in time, right? So that's kind of how it's exactly what it sounds like. Versioning. You're versioning your program state so that you could go back in time and forward into it. So that's one problem that it solves. But I guess the biggest reason why people use Git and version control is to work together with people. With Git, every time you commit your changes and create a new node in your history, it says who made those changes, what the changes are supposed to be, and you could diff between two nodes to see what changes occurred. So it's like it's a really good way to work together with other engineers. And this may not make all sense to you guys in the beginning. It's almost like saving. Git and version control is almost like saving, but it kind of isn't at the same time. So if it doesn't make any sense, it's fine. Just keep looking through the do these challenges that I'm gonna put on the bottom. Do the challenge and try to figure out what really is Git, and try to understand what version control is. So here's some of the essentials that you're gonna need, terminologies and concepts. So let's see. So what is staging? What is committed? What is nodes? Basically, if you look down here, I created an image of what you'll see a lot when you're working with Git. So when you do Git status after you made so the steps to get to something like this, so let's say that you have some files, you save those, make some changes, and you save it. When you initially do that and your files are unstaged, you'll see this unmerged path, both modified, like this kind of it's basically saying they're not these changes are not ready to be committed. So if you look up here, these changes are ready to be committed. So when you make a commit to your you make a new node, essentially. When you commit something, you make a new node in your commit history in your git log, and when you do git log, you'll be able to see it. So what do I mean by nodes, right? So if you look at this picture down here, this is kind of a very standard Git branching strategy, or just an example of what a Git controlled project may look like. So if you see here, there's master. So when you create a new project and you initialize the project to have Git version control, then it actually creates a master branch for you. And each circle that you see here is a node, and in a node it's just a simply your program state at that time. And these different lines that you see, they're what you call different branches. And the best way I could explain like branching, I guess it's like having multiple universes, right? Like if you have a timeline and then here something happened and there's 3 different timelines, exact copies of that universe, but basically they have their own history, right? And the little lines that you see going into each other, you could just think of that as combining the 2 timelines together into one point. So if you look right here, oh, sorry. So if you look right here, that's the master branch, and then dev branch was created. And then people made some changes here. All these nodes are changes that were committed to the dev branch history timeline essentially. And then at this point, they merged back to master. So all the code changes that were here are now in master at this point. So that's called merging into master. All of this may seem like really complex and like, why do we need this? And you might have questions like that, but once you start working with projects, everything will kind of click in, right? Everything will click in. So moving on, here's some of the most common commands. Git init initializes Git into your project. Git status just shows you what are staged and what files are not staged. Git add, it adds the files that are not staged into the staging area. Commit essentially creates a new node and commits this stage changes into a new node. So essentially it's creating a new node like this. And there's git log, git checkout, git branch, git merge. These are some of the common commands that you'll use. And to be honest, with just these, having a good understanding of these, you could get by with a lot of projects and just understand version control really. It's not that complex in the end. Once you get it, it's pretty straightforward. Briefly, I want to talk about GitHub versus Git. Back up here, I showed you guys that there's an origin remote branch right here, and basically GitHub, which is this whole website that I'm hosting my particular documentation here and this challenge on, but it's just think of it as a remote repository of your code, right? So it's on the web, it's cloud-based, so anyone can pull the code and push changes. And this, I'll cover this in another pretty much the next challenge essentially. So going down, this is the challenge that I want you guys to do. One note is if this is the first time you're using Git, you need to configure your Git. So here's the commands to do it. But again, the biggest thing that I want to get out of this is that I'm not gonna show you everything step by step. Of course, I'll have answers to these challenges. In the beginning, it will be more in step by step, but I want to get to a point where the people who are going through these foundation series in the Soul Encoded channel to be able to get better and at finding their answers, finding out where to, going to additional resources, Googling things. I want you guys to, work like a real engineer. And, I Google stuff all the time at work, and almost everyone, we joke about it, but we call Google the Oracle, right? Like not the Oracle, the company, but like an Oracle, because it knows all the answers. But get really good at Googling. If you're really good at Googling, then and finding good information through Google and very quickly, you could be a great engineer. At least I believe so. So in this particular challenge, you're just gonna get familiar with Git. You're gonna create a new project, initialize Git, create a file, add some text into the file. It's just, in this example, it's just a JavaScript file with some logs, but it could be anything. You could commit these changes, and what does committing really, like, how do you do the commit? So I want you guys to figure out those steps. Create and check out a new branch, open this JavaScript file again in the new branch and make some changes to that. and then merge that back into the master branch. So if this is the first time, all this might sound really like complex, but try your best and figure it out for yourself. If you can't, I've created a solutions branch, and if you go up, here's an example of how to get there. Basically, you just go up here and then check out the solutions branch. And then if you look quickly at the very bottom, down here, it has all the solutions. So this is kind of an example of how to get there. I mean, how to solve this in one way. So like the big thing about programming to me is like everything that you learn, all these things, there's a lot to learn, but all it is just solving small problems and knowing what tool to use and how to use those tools just enough to be able to solve those problems, right? Because Git is complex. So if you go to the additional resources, all of Git can be very complex. So look at the official documentation, and there's this guy on YouTube named Derek. He has a really good series on Git, and he covers a lot in Git, like almost all the commands, right? But like, just what I want to focus on is giving you the bare essentials of what you need to know to start working on projects, right? Because personally for me, I really like learning based on making something. Like I need an end goal, I need something. So when you're doing this, start thinking about projects that you want to create, and as this like series goes on, I want you to create like this passion project with me. But yeah, that's pretty much everything. I hope you guys successfully finish your challenges. If you get stuck, you know, send a message to me, and I'll try my best to help you out. But yeah, comment below on what else you want to see in the future. Thank you.